And with more on this is NewsNation contributor and former aide to George W. Bush, Denise Gitsham. Also joining us, Riyadh Kazmi, the owner of Kazmi Advisors and former Faith Cabinet member for the Harris campaign. Great to have you both. Thank you for being here. Denise, I'd like to start with you. And let's start by broadening out this discussion a bit to get to the overarching tariff impacts. So just this week, China appeared to signal they may be more open to discussions on this topic. A trading expert joined Chris Cuomo just last night, and he shared this.
It would be much easier for us to have a dialogue with them and have use tariffs if we didn't have a global tariff trade war going on at the same time. So now, when you look at our economy and the strength that we have versus just focusing on China, now we have issues with Europe, we have issues with Japan, we have issues with China, or Canada and Mexico. So we've really put ourselves, by coming forward with this stick across the entire globe, in a really, I think, a poor position from a negotiation standpoint.
So what do you make of that argument, Denise, that the overall goal, it's a good one, but that the president's strategy is leaving us vulnerable?
Well, we've heard that a lot from Democrats and some Republicans as well. And the reality is nobody's ever done anything to do anything about the tariffs, regardless of how they've felt, whether it was Democrats in the 90s led by Nancy Pelosi or any Republican afterwards or any even Democratic president. So the fact that President Trump is doing anything, I feel like he should get credit for. And then in regards to whether or not his strategy, his execution is going to work, time will tell. If the White House is telling the truth and they have a bunch of deals that they're working on, we'll know soon enough whether or not it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Riyadh, on the flip side of this, you have those who argue that getting all of our allies and our trading partners in a grand coalition against China was attempted by the Biden administration and it failed, that the U.S. is such a major consumer market, nations will be forced to make fair deals here. What are your thoughts on those points and on Denise's response as well?
Thank you so much, Kelly, for asking that. What I would say is it's kind of a strategy of acting as a bully. I do think that I want to applaud President Trump and this administration on attempting to cause more of a hopefully better global economy. But I will say, you just can't make a decision and upset all of your allies. There is not an ally in the world who is happy with the economy that we are experiencing. When President Trump and the administration announced massive tariffs all over the place, I mean, a lot of it was outlandish, especially for people who we have very strong trading partnerships with. I do think, though, you realize that the administration will make these outlandish, extreme decisions, publicly state it, and then they'll start to roll back what they said when they recognize that it was either a bad decision or they legally overstepped their bounds. I do think that now, because of that, we have this massive exception that at the earlier part of the hour when you were speaking, President Trump shared that there was a massive exception to this 25% tariff. We do recognize that some of these tariffs are going down. I do think that it is causing everyone in the world to have a conversation, and I will applaud this administration on that, even though I disagree with the strategy that was used to execute it.
Let's look at this through a political lens for just a moment as well. Denise, this trade war, it is a major risk for the president. Many do believe in the mission. They're also concerned with the uncertainty the U.S. is facing in so many areas as a result. We know China's leader also is under a great deal of political pressure in different ways. But for those giving the president grace right now, how long do you see that lasting before the heat is really ramped up in a major way for him to potentially change course?
Well, I think if prices end up rising significantly for any extended amount of time, he's going to feel the heat, because it is always about the economy, stupid, right? James Carville was brilliant when he said that, and he's still right. The other thing is, I would say there are multiple target audiences, multiple constituencies that President Trump, is focused on. But the one that he cares the most about, because it's the one that delivered the White House for him, are the previously Democratic voters that voted for him and delivered that win in November. And they're the ones that are applauding him. They're not lamenting the fact that he's put tariffs on all these other countries. They're excited. I mean, UAW's Sean Fain, he actually came out against some of the MSNBC reporters that were grilling him on it and said, this is fantastic, we stand behind him. But also even international leaders, Claudia Sheinbaum, she actually lauded the conversations she's been having with President Trump on a bilateral basis as a win for their nation as they renegotiate trade. So not everybody is upset about what's happening. And I think a lot of these other nations that were having bilateral bilateral talks with, because again, tariffs are one of the leverages President Trump is using for much bigger geopolitical purposes. It's not just about the economy or just tariffs. It's actually about much more to reposition America in a position of strength. But a lot of other leaders of countries are seeing this as a win for themselves as well, as evidenced by Claudia Sheinbaum's recent remarks.
Yeah, resetting the table. Absolutely. You know,
Yep.
Riyadh, like with any major gamble, this could be a big win for the Trump presidency if major inroads are made, these trade deals are announced, and the markets respond favorably to the deals that are made. How do you see that playing out politically if this does go under the W column for the president?
I think that this administration and House and Senate Republicans, I think, have about a 3-month more runway. I say that to say, if we do look at the economy, the S&P 500 last year had an overall growth of 10%. If we look at their last 3-month return, it literally is down 6%. That is a problem. And I do believe what our other guest said is it could be helpful to him. The problem is, if you are a Republican in the House who is in a district that is more purple than red, you're going to be put in a position where you're going to have to make choices. And the reason I say there's a 3-month runway, we all know that this hopefully big, beautiful bill that the president has called it and Speaker Johnson has continuously said, that budget omnibus bill is due before September 30th, right? And so that 3-month runway is really going to dictate, do Democrats have the opportunity to take over the House and or compete more in the Senate? I do believe from an economic standpoint, we look at the jobs reports we've talked about, right? 177,000 new jobs in April. Back in March, there were 185,000, 102,000 in February. You can say maybe the economy is quote unquote stabilizing, but when you look at the big picture, that's actually not the case. I think if the administration does not get things under control in the next 3 months, Democrats have a shot. And that means this administration is going to have to continue to roll back some of their, like I said, outlandish policies. The reason why Claudia Sheinbaum is happy now is because Mexico, when the president first announced the tariffs, was getting hammered just as much, almost as much as China.
Well, that
and
legislation, I don't mean to cut you off, is going to be key. We're going to be talking about that much more in our next hour. And I apologize, we are out of time. But Denise, Riyadh, thank you both for joining us. Insightful as always. We appreciate both perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
And huge clouds.